What's going on, people? Myke C-Town here with another episode of Metal Milestones, where I discuss really important metal albums on the anniversary of their release. And today I'm talking about a very special album to me, and that is Arise by Sepultura. So this is the 30th anniversary of this album. This came out on March 25th, 1991, and little, very short, brief history. Sepultura is a Brazilian metal band that kind of started off as a fairly standard thrash metal band. They later became more of a cross between thrash and death metal. They actually had a rather unique sound back then. You know, they had a special way of composing their riffs, and it always felt like there was a special ingredient there, and I wasn't sure what that ingredient was until quite a bit later. But they had a few albums before Arise. They had Beneath the Remains, Schizophrenia, Morbid Visions, and I do enjoy those albums, but I've always said it was Arise that really set them apart and made them special. We're not going to really get into what they did later, but just for clarity, after Chaos ID, this band kind of ended for me personally. I wasn't a fan of Roots or anything that came after Roots, although, quick note, I did listen to the album that they did last year, and it was actually pretty awesome, so there's that. But Arise was the album that really got them noticed internationally by underground metalheads and by mainstream guys. It even charted on Billboard at a rather impressive slot. They worked with Scott Burns on this album and recorded at Morrisound Studios, which for a band from Brazil, that was actually a monumental thing at the time. And yes, they did work with Scott Burns on Beneath the Remains as well, but they did not record at Morrisound for that album. So I don't know if I've ever really talked about this album on my channel, but this is actually one of the earliest metal albums that I ever heard. I was already into hardcore and metallic hardcore, but not so much into metal. And one of my friends in high school, Andy, he brought this to me thinking that I would dig it. Same guy that introduced me to Carcass, so thank you, Andy. But he thought I would dig it based on the hardcore that I actually liked at the time. So I gave it a shot, and I loved it, man. The way this thing kicks off with the title track, Arise. Holy shit, that riff. So good. It almost felt like a hardcore song when I first heard it. At the time, I knew nothing about these guys actually being interested in punk and hardcore, so I was a bit taken aback by the way this sounded, but you can clearly get the picture that these guys were fans of late 80s hardcore. The way the vocals were laid out, it's kind of hard to describe, but it just felt more so the way a hardcore singer would do it rather than a standard thrash band. The chorus for this song is a prime example. Obliteration of mankind, under a pale gray sky we shall arise. And especially when it gets to that breakdown, you really hear it. I see the world old. I see the world dead. The hardcore element is that special ingredient that I was referring to. And of course, thrash, crossover, there's always going to be a hardcore element, but this one was different. It was more prominent, and it was a specific kind of hardcore. But I genuinely feel that that's what gave them a bit of their edge. Dead Embryonic Cells is such a great song, and it was here that I was really impressed by the lyrics. War of races, world without intelligence, a place consumed by time, end of it all. And then going into the chorus. We're born with pain, no more, we're dead embryonic cells. Hearing a band like this making this type of commentary on how the world is plagued by so many problems and issues that we're basically born dead. We're dead embryonic cells. This was something that I was used to with hearing from hardcore bands, but hearing a metal band singing about these things in a similar fashion was a world-opening experience for me. Murder is another one of my favorites on here. It just starts off so vicious. Great fucking riffs on this song. Same hand that builds destroys. Same hand that relieves betrays. Same hand that seeds burns. Same peace that exists here lies. Again, showing that this was not your standard metal band singing about just being angry for no reason or singing about Satan or whatever else. You know, these guys really had something important to say. I can't trust anymore. Criminals within the law. I have something to say. Where I live, don't believe in another day. These guys were from a place in Brazil called Belo Horizonte, which is a place that has been plagued by violence and corruption within the police department for a long time. And I'm not saying that as a way of putting down the area, of course, but I'm saying that as a way to display the reason that Sepultura was putting this kind of messaging into their lyrics. You know, it seemed like they wanted to bring light to the conditions of that region. You can kind of look at them as the NWA of Brazilian metal. Meaningless Movements gives you another dose of that special ingredient that I was talking about earlier, man. The riffs at the start of this song could have come straight from a Cro-Mags album. But the next song, Infected Voice, is one of my favorite songs on this album. God damn it, this whole song is full of ridiculously good riffs. The main riffs are fantastic, but the melodies that are added here are just great. And I love the drum work, the China hits. They always get me when I listen to this, and it's just a fantastic way to end this album. As I said earlier, this is one of the first metal albums that I ever heard, and I do actually feel like if it wasn't for this album, I may not have gotten into metal, but it's an album that totally opened my mind up to what metal was and to what metal could offer, and I absolutely fell in love with it. And then my mind was completely blown when I heard Chaos AD, because it was basically a hardcore album. Then my heart kind of broke when Roots came out, but I don't want to make this about that. You know, I want to make this about what I feel is the most important album to their career. You know, the album that birthed what we knew as Sepultura. You know, Arise to me is pretty much a flawless album. You know, the guitar work between Max and Andreas was unstoppable. Igor's drum work was all over the place. It's just frantic, you know, and it sounded like he was beating the fuck out of those drums the entire time. He's just so incredibly tight on this album. But yeah, this album is just absolutely fantastic. I hold this as the pinnacle of Sepultura. I know a lot of people do look at Roots for that title, and that's okay. I'm not saying Roots is a bad album. It's just, it was going in a musical direction that I had absolutely no interest in. But this one hits me in the stomach and in the face every single time I put it on. And yeah, it's a very, very important album for me, and for, I'm sure, a whole lot of you guys as well. So if you've not heard this album, turn this fucking video off and go listen to it, and then come back and let's talk about it. If you have heard this album, drop some comments down there in the comments section and let me know what this album means to you. I would especially love to hear from my Brazilian viewers, especially if you're close to my age. What did this album mean for you when it came out and it took off and it actually put more eyes on that region? I'm really curious about that. But yeah, that's gonna do it for this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. As usual, thank you for living, thank you for loving, thank you for being you, and I'll see you guys next time. All right, peace out, boy.